Hey, Ryan. Hi, this is Sarah Palin.
Ryan, Donald Trump Jr.
Hogs to win, see you. Hey, everybody, I want y'all to check out a fellow Marines podcast.
My name is Ted Nugent, and I got a call from my buddy Ryan F. Samuels, and he wants me to tell you that he's a working hard, playing all-American son of a who is celebrating God, family, country.
Welcome to the Ryan Samuels Show, one of the top political podcasts in the United States, where we have a healthy distrust for government and mainstream media. The Ryan Samuels Show is a raw, unfiltered look at American politics. Follow on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Here is your host, Ryan Samuels.
Hello, Patriots. This is Ryan Samuels. Welcome to the Ryan Samuels Show. Big news today. Apparently, ABC has come out and accidentally posted the Harris election results as a winner in a key swing state during a race on their television. Now, obviously, their statement is, oh, well, actually, we were just testing our system, and we didn't mean to publish that, and we actually accidentally did publish that. Let's take a look at this. So here it is during a race, projected as Harris, 52% winner, and then another candidate pops up. Now, it is perfectly logical to believe that they accidentally jack this up. However, it does not build confidence in the American people after the serious questioning of the previous election. Now, I'm not saying that this was malice in nature. There is a good probability that they were just messing with the system, and then all of a sudden some idiot put it on the air when they should not have. However, the polls right now in early voting are looking very good for Donald Trump. Now, that does not mean to sit back, relax, and do nothing. You need to vote. You need to make sure that you vote. And there's a key component of that I am going to go over as to why. But before we proceed, make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And don't forget, if you want to support the show, you can always buy me a coffee, and that's buymeacoffee.com/Ryan F. Samuels, and you can donate to the show, and I can sit here, drink a cup of coffee. You can leave a message, and that I will read out on the air. So, Donald Trump's looking very good in the early polling votes, in the early voting polls. Now, there is a YouTuber. This is from Election Time. We're going to go over this video, and we're going to talk about it and see just exactly why Donald Trump is leading in the early voting polls, and is it a cause for concern or is it a blessing? These are things that we're going to go over. Also, this QR code here that you see, you can scan that to buy me a coffee. So let's check out this early polling map that we're going to go over here.
The 2024 election has actually already started. Over 50 million votes have been cast. We still have 1 week to go until the election, but these early voting numbers are looking spectacular for the Republicans. Trump is practically drowning Kamala Harris in the early vote. Now, you might look at these numbers and say Democrats are at 42, Republicans at 40, but what you also have to consider is that these independent voters that do not identify with either party in terms of their party registration, this 18%, they break more for Trump than for Harris.
And a lot of that 18% is the Libertarian vote. Now, the Libertarian vote typically will vote Republican. I'm a Libertarian, but I'm going to vote Republican 100% in this election. So a lot of those 18% are actual Libertarians. Also, Republicans also don't like to register who they are, because we've seen persecution of, YouTubers. Barack Obama sent the IRS after people who did not align with the political philosophy of the left. And that seems to be a trend of what the left actually does.
comparing it to 2020, this is where we see the most significant shift. So these are the early voting numbers from 4 years ago. Democrats were at 45%, Republicans at just 30%. The GOP was getting crushed in the early vote, but this time it is basically a tie. This is yet another signal that Trump is indeed on track for a massive electoral college victory. And so in this video, we'll be taking a look at the 2024 electoral map based on this year's early voting statistics and comparing it to what we saw 4 years ago. And so right off the bat, we're going to start off by filling in Missouri, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Alabama. These are 4 states where we simply do not have early voting data, but there's no doubt they're going to go to Trump by solid margins just like they have in the last 2 cycles. We're also going to fill in the remaining safe states for both candidates. These are races that simply won't be competitive. Ultimately, they're not going to matter too much in terms of electing the next president. So for Trump, we also have Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, along with North and South Dakota. We have all of Nebraska except its 2nd district, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Alaska, while Kamala Harris is going to easily carry Washington, Oregon, California, as well as Hawaii, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, while in Maine, the 1st district is solid blue and the 2nd solid red. And so we're now left with just the 17 most competitive races on the map. They make up less than half of the Electoral College, but they...
Isn't it crazy how, like, we start a race before it's even competitive, and Kamala's at 181 and Trump's at 126. California is 54 electoral college votes alone, and New York is 28. And they own a stranglehold on the presidential election. I mean, that's a lot of electoral college votes. You have to take over almost half the country to even break even with that.
They do have an overwhelming majority of the deciding power when it comes to choosing our next president. We're going to start off out west in Nevada, where Democrats are in huge trouble. 4 years ago, they led in the early voting. They were ahead by 4 points, Democrats at 39, Republicans at just 35. But this time, things have completely changed. It is the GOP that is now in the lead. They're at 40%, Democrats at just 35. So we went from a Democrat +4 environment now to Republican +5. Nevada is going to be lean Republican on the map. There's no doubt Trump is going to flip the state. Democrats haven't actually made any progress in the Silver State since the early Obama era, as the state has been trending right ever since. In 2022, they elected a Republican governor, kicking the incumbent Democrat out of office. In neighboring Arizona, things don't get any better for the vice president. 4 years ago, Joe Biden was behind by just 3% in the early voting, 35% for Democrats, 38% for Republicans. And with these numbers, Biden actually won the state of Arizona by 0.3%, becoming the first Democrat to win it since 1996. But for 2024, Republicans have expanded their lead. They're now at 42%, Democrats at just 35%. And one other thing you have to note is that Republicans always vote more in person on election day.
Now, that's the concern, is that Republicans do always vote more on election day or in person. However, there has been a major push for early voting from the Trump campaign. For early voting, to get there now, get your votes in, get them done. That my biggest concern is that most of the Republicans already voted. And then on election day, they're just going to kind of trickle in. So that is a major concern. Hold on. We have a buy me a coffee. Somebody bought me a coffee. Thank you. This is from John B. Ryan. I'm going to read it because it's hilarious. Ryan, you are a no-talent ass clown, and I hope you drown on this coffee. Well, thank you, John. And thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate that. This sip's for you. Anyway, John, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Feel free to send me $5 anytime you wish to insult me. No talent ass clown. Now that's funny stuff right there. Anyway, that is my major concern, is that conservatives are just not going to show up. And my other concern is that the news is reporting that Donald Trump is showing the lead even though the polls still show that they are completely neck and neck. Now, that could be for two reasons, which we talked about the other day. And one is that the pollsters have been completely wrong in every previous election. So now they are absolutely terrified that they're going to be completely wrong again. So they're going to err on the side of caution. And what that means is, hey, we're just going to show them neck and neck, because then it's a win-win for us. That, you know, we're not predicting somebody completely destroying another person. Then it goes the complete opposite way. But early voting is looking good. Let's continue to watch this video.
We're going to see a huge boost in GOP turnout on November 5th, and if Democrats are already behind in early voting by 7 points, it'll be impossible for them to catch up. So Arizona is also going to be lean Republican. Moving on to Colorado and New Mexico, things just keep getting worse for Kamala Harris. 4 years ago, Democrats led by 2. This time, they lead by 3. And it might look like Kamala Harris is in good shape here, but if you look at the breakdown by age, you'll quickly realize that she is actually in a lot of trouble. The 65 and over group is the most important voting bloc in terms of age. They are always more active than younger voters, and they always break heavily in favor of the GOP. And look at the early voting numbers from 2020. 23% in Colorado were 65 and over. Today, that number has ballooned to 45. This is a huge advantage for Republicans, and if this trend continues, Colorado is going to become one of the most competitive races in the country. It's not even going to be likely Harris. Biden actually won Colorado by 14 points. The vice president isn't even going to break 7. It's going to be lean blue on our map. In New Mexico, things are pretty similar. In 2020, Democrats were at 49%. This time, they're at 49% again. And when you look at these pages, you'll notice that there are 2 graphs. You have to focus on the bar that shows the votes actually being cast, because these people that just requested a ballot, they never actually ended up voting. And so based on just the party registration, it may look like Democrats are on track to win New Mexico again. But if you break down the voting by age, you'll see that a majority of them come from the 65 or over group. This is very good news for Republicans, because in 2020, the 65 or over group accounted for just 42% of the early voting electorate. So New Mexico is going to be very competitive as well. In fact, it's going to be tilt blue on this map. Down in Texas, Republicans are in a good place here as well. 4 years ago, they were at 53%. Today, they're at 52%. And this might seem like a small drop-off, but if you compare the age statistics, you'll see the 65 and older group are at 36. In 2020, they were at just 26. And this highlights another one of the big issues for Kamala Harris. One of her big strategies for winning the election has been to court younger voters. And
courting younger voters is something that Barack Obama really did. And if he did not do that, the Get Out and Vote campaign, he would have lost to Mitt Romney. People were not happy. You know, people tend to forget. People were not happy with Barack Obama. And you know, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, which turned out to be a complete lie. It was absolutely absurd. And you know, with Obamacare, people did not want Obamacare. People did not want to be forced to have health insurance or faced penalties by the federal government. It was completely insane. People were furious, but he did the Get Out and Vote campaign to get the younger crowds out to vote, because if younger people tend to lean more left, as the saying goes, if you're a Republican when you're young, you don't have a heart, and if you're a liberal when you're old, you don't have a brain.
Simply haven't been turning out for her. 4 years ago, we saw 14% in the 18 to 29 category. Today, we see just 9. Younger voters break heavily in favor of Democrats, but if they're not turning out, the Democratic Party has no chance of securing this race. And so Texas is actually going to be solid red on our map. Trump is going to win the Lone Star State by his largest margin ever. Before we continue, only 70% of you guys are actually subscribed, so please subscribe right now for more content content like this leading up to the election in November. We're now going to move on.
You guys should subscribe to this channel. I mean, this stuff is pretty good.
To Georgia, we're going to finish up the Sun Belt before moving up to the Midwest. And so in 2020, Georgia early voting favored Republicans by 8%. Today, they favor Republicans by 4%. It's not too much of a change, but one other big thing you have to remember is that there's a huge difference between mail-in ballots and early in-person ballots. When you vote early in person, you can do that in the days and weeks leading up to Election Day. However, mail-in ballots can be mailed in up to 2 months sometimes before November 5th. And so when you look at the numbers, you have to consider that Republicans heavily favor voting early in person over voting by mail. And so these numbers are only going to go up for Republicans as more and more people vote early in person as Election Day nears. A huge majority of the votes cast so far in Georgia come from mail-in ballots, which are going to favor Democrats exponentially more. And so in Georgia, we have more good news for Republicans. It is going to be lean red on our map. Now, if you want to see a big shift, just look at Florida. I mean, it is incredible what Republicans have done here over the last 4 years. They turned the Sunshine State from probably the most competitive in the country to one of the least. If you look at the early voting numbers from 4 years ago, Democrats and Republicans were basically neck and neck. It was 39-38 in favor of the Dems. But today, Republicans have taken a huge lead with the 5.1 million early votes already cast. It was a tie last time. This time, Republicans are at 45, Democrats at just 34. So Florida.
Now, keep in mind, again, this is only counting the early votes. This is not counting Election Day votes. This is not counting all of the mail-in ballots that have not been counted.
Is going to be likely Republican on the map. I can totally see Trump winning the state by a double-digit margin.
I mean, Ron DeSantis has completely secured almost every single county in Florida as conservative. I mean, we've had, big-time people move here. Ben Shapiro moved to Florida. Dan Bongino moved to Florida. Donald Trump moved to Florida. So Florida is becoming a conservative stronghold, which is exactly what we need more of across the country to secure these elections.
Before I continue, I want to tell you guys about Polymarket, the world's largest prediction market, where you can track election results and instantly see who's leading. These odds react in real time to current events instead of days later like the polls. There's no bias or media spin, just pure data. Market odds reflect the collective analysis, beliefs, and wisdom of thousands of traders reacting to world events. Polymarket has also recently launched a mobile app where you can access their 2024 election forecast below. Coming back to the map now, we're going to shift our focus to North Carolina, another state where the early voting numbers have shifted from favoring Democrats to Republicans. In 2020, Democrats led by 5 points. They were at 37, Republicans at just 32. Today, Republicans have totally turned things around. They actually lead now by 1%, the GOP at 34, Democrats at 33. And remember, with more and more early in-person votes being cast every day, Republicans are only going to increase their vote share. And so North Carolina is a good example of a state that's been shifting to the left, but Democrats simply haven't been able to crack the code. They've been putting hundreds of millions of dollars into winning North Carolina over the past decade, but they simply haven't been able to do it. In 2020, Joe Biden led in the early voting. Things were looking good. He was ahead in the polling average throughout the entirety of the cycle, but he still somehow lost by 1.3%. If Trump could hold the Tar Heel state 4 years ago, he can definitely do it against Kamala Harris, where he's actually leading in the early voting numbers. And
so here's the thing. Here's what's happening, right? Typically, Democrats lead in early voting. I've said that 100 times today, okay? The reason it was so substantial last time is because of reasons we're not really going to get into, but there was a massive sense of urgency for Democrats. The pandemic was pushed extremely hard, and the sense of urgency was to get Trump out of office, or everybody's basically just going to die. There was a I hate to say real sense of urgency, but it was to them, to the voters, to the masses. There was a real sense of urgency. They're trying to create that sense of urgency now with, oh, he's Hitler. He's going to be a dictator. You're never going to have to vote again. He's going to be a dictator forever. He's going to steal elections. He's going to persecute political enemies. That's what they're doing. They're trying to create that sense of urgency, but it's not working. And we're seeing that it's not working because it's the same old tired story. There's nothing new to report about Donald Trump that hasn't already been reported. And to just harp on this one thing, it's not working. People are not going out and voting because they're terrified.
And so North Carolina is also going to be lean Republican. All 4 of the battlegrounds we've gone over so far heavily favor the GOP. Finishing up the South with Virginia, in 2020, Democrats led in the early votes by 8%. Today, they lead by 14. But once again, you have to keep in mind that a lot of early in-person votes haven't been cast, and they're going to push the Republican count up. And you also have to consider age, as today, Republicans are doing well with the 65 and over group. 45% of the ballots returned so far in the Commonwealth of Virginia came from elderly voters. In 2020, this number was just 32. I mean, look at the youth votes, 16% for Joe Biden, now to just 8 for Kamala Harris. So Virginia is going to be another incredibly competitive state that Joe Biden won by a double-digit margin back in 2020. It is also going to be tilt blue. We're now going to move up to the Midwest, where Kamala Harris's entire campaign hinges on her ability to win Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. She cannot.
That is extremely challenging to do. To win all of those swing states is really hard to do.
Afford to lose even one of these 4 states. And so we're going to start off in Minnesota, where Kamala Harris is ahead by 23 points in the early votes so far. 4 years ago, Joe Biden led by 13. We see a huge uptick in these independent voters, and just look at their age, they're likely coming from the 65 or over group, which is very good for Donald Trump. And you also, of course, have to consider that there's a huge difference between mail-in and early in-person ballots. You can mail in a ballot on any given day, but in terms of voting early in person, there are only a few days where that is actually available. So a huge majority of these votes, once again, come from these mail-in ballots, which favor Democrats disproportionately. And so Minnesota is going to be lean blue. The early voting numbers here aren't terrible, but she's not going to break Joe Biden's margin. He won it by 7. The vice president is definitely going to perform worse. Moving on down.
This is Tim Walz's state, Minnesota. Tampon Tim.
To Iowa, in 2020, Democrats had a huge advantage. They led by 12 points. Now, this was ultimately a state that Joe Biden lost by 8 points, but in 2024 today, Democrats are in even bigger trouble. We see basically a tie in terms of the party registration from which the early votes have been cast. It's 42 for Democrats, 39 for Republicans. With these numbers, you can totally expect Trump to win Iowa by a solid margin. It's going to be his best performance in the state yet. He flipped the state back in 2016. He held on to it in 2020 by virtually the same margin, even though Joe Biden was supposed to be a much better candidate than Hillary Clinton. And so with the early votes basically tied, Iowa is going to be deep red. In the 2nd district of Nebraska, we do not have data specific to the district, but by all accounts, it's going to be lean blue. We do have numbers from Wisconsin, though, where in 2020, Democrats were at 35%. Today, they're at just 36, barely an increase. Now, we do see there's a much larger group of unaffiliated voters, but they break heavily in favor of Trump, so it's not really too much of an issue. And of course, we have a lot more early in-person voting that's going to happen, and this is also going to favor Republicans heavily. In fact, half of the early ballots that have been cast already have been cast by people that are 65 or older. In 2020, this number was just 34, so more.
And now you see why Trump is pushing no tax on Social Security for 65 and up voters. And it seems to be working.
Good news for Republicans. And I mean, the bad thing for Kamala Harris here is that she cannot lose Wisconsin, she cannot lose Michigan, she cannot lose Pennsylvania either. And on the first of the 3 that we've looked at, Wisconsin is currently on track to vote in favor of Trump. He won the state by 0.7 in 2016. He's probably going to be able to win it by more than 2 this time around. Kamala Harris isn't looking good in Michigan either. This is the most liberal of all 7 swing states. If she's going to win any one of the 7 battlegrounds, it's going to be Michigan. Fox News actually recently recently moved Michigan from the lean Democrat column now to being a toss-up. They also recently moved Arizona out from the toss-up category to being lean Trump. And so all across the map, the former president is making gains. Michigan is no exception. In 2020, Democrats were behind by 2 points with the early ballots that were returned. Today, Democrats lead by just 7 points, so a smaller margin than even what we saw in Wisconsin. By age, 53% are 65 and older, just 8% come from younger voters. Looking at the numbers from 2020, 13% were from the 18 to 29 demographic. And so Michigan is a state that Kamala Harris simply cannot lose. If Michigan goes, she's going to lose the election in a modern day landslide, with Trump picking up every single swing state and potentially even more. You look at these graphs and you see maybe in some of the swing states the Democrats are slightly ahead, but this is not where they need to be, and they know that. That is why they're panicking. Michigan is going to be lean Republican. Down in Ohio, the early voting numbers have been pretty similar here. In 2020, it was 48 to 38 in favor of the Republicans.
And as we know, the Muslim community leaders just came out and endorsed Donald Trump, which is a huge demographic that Kamala Harris was trying to hit. That's why she won't take a stance on Israel. We went over this yesterday. She won't take a stance on Israel because because if she supports Israel, then there's a huge Islamic community in Michigan. Huge Islamic community in Michigan. So if she takes a stance to support Israel, she's going to lose that vote. Van Jones came out and said that. But the problem is, we talked about this previously, the problem is Kamala has taken a stance on Israel, and she's also taken a stance on Palestine, on Hamas. Well, not Hamas, but on the Gaza, saying that, Israel is in fact, genociding innocent civilians. She's said that. And she's also said that the Hamas should not have attacked October 7th. So essentially, she pissed off both sides of the argument, right? She tried to be moderate, but she friggin' fumbled the football on that. And Trump is smart, and he just came out and said, I just want people to stop dying. He's like, I'm not here to support Israel. I'm not here to support Palestine. We just need to get this war ended and over. And we need to get the Abraham Accords passed and just get peace there finally. Like, this just needs to stop. Not, I support Israel. It was a smart move because now he picked up votes on both sides. It appears, especially in Michigan, is what it appears like.
Today, it's 49 to 42, once again, in favor of the Republicans. Nearly 2 million votes have already been cast in the Buckeye State. It's a state that always votes very similarly to Iowa, another state where numbers for the GOP are pretty good. However, Iowa does lean slightly more to the right than its other Midwestern neighbor, and so Ohio is going to be placed into the likely red category. I definitely see Trump winning by big margins here, but it's not going to go as far for him as Iowa. And now, to finish off the Midwest, we have Pennsylvania. This is the big one. Pennsylvania is very important to both campaigns. It also makes winning the election much easier for Trump, because if he wins Pennsylvania, all he'll need is North Carolina and Georgia along with it. He won't need Michigan, he won't need Wisconsin, nor will he need Nevada or Arizona. And so in Pennsylvania, we see some pretty promising early voting numbers for the GOP. In 2020, it was 65% Democrat, 24% Republican. Today, it's only 59% Democrat, 31% Republican. The GOP is in a very good spot here. We still have an entire week of early in-person voting left. There's really conceivably no way that Kamala Harris is going to win the Keystone State. She should have chosen Josh Shapiro to be her running mate. That would have been the smarter choice. I mean, Tim Walz was a complete flop in the debate against J.D. Vance. And so Pennsylvania is also going to be lean red. This means that all 7 of the battlegrounds currently clearly favor the Republican nominee. We're now going to finish off the map up in the Northeast with New Hampshire and Maine. Looking at the 2020 numbers in the Granite State, we saw Democrats at 50%, Republicans at just 21. Republicans were outnumbered more than 2-1 4 years ago, but today, Democrats are at just 39, Republicans at 33. It is virtually a tie. And New Hampshire is a state that Trump realistically can win. I mean, in 2016, he came within half a percentage point of defeating Clinton. And so today, the state of New Hampshire is once again going to be tilt blue. Democrats are still favored, but they definitely are cutting it close. In Maine, though, we don't see that dramatic of a difference, but Republicans have improved here as well. In 2020, Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1, exactly 48-24. Today, though, they are ahead by just 17 points. Republicans gained. They're now at 27. Democrats have fallen to just 44. And so Maine is going to be lean for Kamala Harris. And so with the 2024 election well underway, over a quarter of the expected vote has already been cast. Democrats at 42%, Republicans at just 40. This is very good news for Republicans, as in 2020, these early voting numbers favored Biden by 15%. Now, in 2020, there was a huge discrepancy in terms of Democrats and Republicans voting early and in person, and this is what the 2024 electoral map would look like if those trends held true. However,
now remember, if those trends hold true, that's the biggest thing to remember. This is just early voting. This has nothing to do with anything else, okay? Election day, a bunch of Democrats can just show up and you could lose the election. In 2016, they predicted that Hillary was just going to mop the floor with Trump. It wasn't even going to be fair. It wasn't even going to be close. It wasn't even going to be honest. It was just completely the wrong way. Completely the wrong way. And again, that's why the polls are super close, is my feeling. So there is news in Pennsylvania, okay, that the Trump campaign is jumping all over, and in Pennsylvania, apparently, allegedly, 2,500 ballots were fraudulent ballots were found. Let's listen to this.
Police person joins us outside the Lancaster County government building with more on how this happened and what it means for voters as well. So in the last week, the Lancaster County commissioners, they tell us that they received 2 large batches of voter registration applications. And as the election workers were going through them, they started to realize something was a little bit off. So they're now investigating election fraud. But as they're doing that investigation, the county commissioners say this should actually make Lancaster voters even more secure in the integrity of their election.
Lancaster County detectives began investigating the voter registration applications and immediately found applications that were indeed fraudulent.
2,500 voter registration applicants being investigated for fraud in Lancaster County.
Immediately, some of these applications were in the same handwriting, and quite frankly, the signatures were almost identical as well. So that right there is a tip-off.
Other indicators of fraud included inaccuracies with addresses or even fake personal identification on the form as well. Now, the Lancaster County DA says not all the applications contain inaccurate information.
But the individuals listed on the applications informed detectives that they did not request the form, they did not complete the form, and verified that the signature on the form was not theirs.
The DA wouldn't go into detail about.
So this is just one incident that's been caught, right? Allegedly. We don't really know. I mean, that's what the county's saying. Donald Trump, the campaign was all over it. Donald Trump tweeted out that they're cheating in Pennsylvania. And then, of course, the left is saying, oh, well, he's here. He's just preparing to lose. I mean, whatever. It's 2024. The election of the president of the United States should be a little bit more secure. Okay? I mean, I'm sorry that I feel that way. You should have to walk in, present your identification, and cast your ballot with your signature. Sorry. I mean, why is that so hard? I mean, do we want it to be fair? I want it to be fair. I don't care who wins. If the people choose the candidate I don't like, then they choose the candidate I don't like. That's democracy. But to live in a society where we just have like these elections that are just completely corruptible. I'm not saying that they are corrupt. I'm saying that they are corruptible, that somebody can register 2,500 people and then, presumably mail in ballots. It's a little concerning. But I'm glad that they caught it in Lancaster County. Now, the Trump administration has learned their lesson from the election of 2020. And I will tell you, I'm not going to tolerate any excuse if Trump does lose and says that the election was stolen and that they did this, they did X, Y, or Z, because you had 4 years with the power of a former president to change the policies, to use the Republican Party with attorneys to secure the election further. If you fail to do that and fail to plan, I'm sorry, that's on you. And I agree that we need to take a stronger stance on securing elections, but there should be no excuse for it now. It's been 4 years. That's plenty of time for the Trump campaign to get these elections secure so that neither side can scream fraud.
Any suspects, but she says they have reason to believe this is part of a large-scale canvassing operation dating back to June.
Thus far, of the investigations that we have completed, we have determined that 60% have been fraudulent.
She says there are 2 other counties that have received similar applications. She wouldn't name them, but says her office is working with them.
And people should feel confident, really, that we're catching this stuff.
Pennsylvania House Republican leader Brian Cutler released a statement about the election fraud investigation, saying, "This investigation serves as a stark reminder of the lengths criminals are willing to go to try and impact our electoral process." And while this is an active investigation, Lancaster County commissioners say whoever is behind this will be held accountable.
It is important to find out who it was and make them an example, quite frankly. We can't have this. The message is we're going to catch you.
And the DA says if you feel like you might have been targeted by one of these canvassing schemes, to reach out.
It is good that they called them, and it's also good that they're reporting it. Like, honestly. I mean, the election officials have come out and said, hey, we caught fake ballots in this location. So I can assure you that the Trump campaign, they're on it. They're on it. They're watching it like a hawk in every county in the country that is up in the air. Okay, they're on top of it. I do not think that they're going to allow that to happen, especially how they felt so strongly last time. So it's going to be fine. Now, Donald Trump came to the Wisconsin rally after Joe Biden decided to call all Trump supporters, every Trump supporter, garbage, in response to Tony Hinchcliffe's joke at Madison Square Garden that has just completely gone away now. It's gone. And Joe Biden gave all the momentum right back to the Trump campaign. Let's listen to this.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden. How do you like my...
Which is just hilarious. He got a garbage truck. He put the Trump campaign logo on it, and he proceeded to say, how do you like my garbage truck? This is my dedication to Joe Biden and Kamala. So Jimmy Kimmel, of course, is just a dumpster fire of a person who's just a shill for the left and uses his platform to push a liberal agenda. I mean, that's literally all that he does. He did a whole skit on Trump, which is just, it's hilarious because this is the guy who used to do the man show and pretend to grab women's rear ends and have girls on trampolines. Mighty sexist, wouldn't you think? Is now some bleeding heart, left-wing, liberal, crazy person. Let's listen to this.
Thanks for watching. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. We're in Los Angeles, California, where I know everybody here at our show is focused on Game 5 of the World Series right now at Yankee Stadium. New York's playing L.A. The Yankees avoided an embarrassing sweep last night, which, if this wasn't already one of the most exciting World Series ever, we got to see something I've never seen before last night involving a fan. You ever see anything like this, Guillermo?
Oh, it was crazy,
And
Jimmy.
you've seen a lot of stuff. You've been around.
For a long time, Jimmy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you lost your virginity to your housekeeper.
Yeah, that's right. I was 14 years old.
So there we go. So last night, in the bottom of the first inning,
He's going over the World Series. I'm going to fast forward it.
according to a new poll from CNN, only 30% of American voters think if he loses, Trump will concede. Which, what would give them that idea? But of course Trump won't concede if he loses his election. He still hasn't conceded the last election. And already he's claiming Pennsylvania is cheating. He wrote, Pennsylvania is cheating. And getting caught at large-scale levels rarely seen before. Report cheating to authorities. Law enforcement must act now. This, of course, is false. It's yet another lie, and there are a lot.
It's another lie. We just watched the news story on how it's not false, on how the police department came out and said, we have 2,500 fraudulent ballots, and other counties have seen the same. But do you see the propaganda? And then, because nobody who heard that story, if you don't really live in Lancaster County or over there, you're not really going to know. But because it's been suppressed in the national news media, and then Jimmy Kimmel says, that's just not true. I mean, that's the biggest load of crap.
More to come over the next several days. Fiberace was in Allentown last night where he treated his admirers to the old my crowd big, her crowd small routine.
Today they're busing people. You know, they're in a place in Washington, and they got buses all up. They're busing people because they couldn't get anybody to show up for her tonight. I didn't bus anybody. You're all here. This place is packed. She can't get anybody.
Yeah, well, Kamala must have hired a lot of buses because there were 75,000 of nobody at a rally last night. It's the most crowded bus stop I've ever seen. 75,000 is 22,000 more than showed up for Trump's rally in that same spot on January 6th. And the craziest part is when she was done speaking, they all just went home. Trump did not like this at all. He gave Kamala's speech 2 mini thumbs down. At 2:37 a.m., in the middle of the night last night, he posted, Kamala's speech was terrible, full of lies and nothing new. Where are the jobs? There are none. I guess he didn't hear the news on unemployment is at 4.1% right now. The reason there are no jobs is because almost everyone has one. Paris today.
It's just BS. It's absolute nonsense. So you can manipulate jobs reports, right? If you're counting full-time jobs, right, with a livable wage, does everybody have that, right? Or are you counting everybody that has any sort of job whatsoever? If you have a person or a mom that works 2 days a week for a cleaning company, they're counting that towards employment, right? Towards employment number. So if you're a freelance writer, you can count that towards an employment number. So what is the actual employment number? And that's the problem with data from the federal government or political candidate is that they twist it towards their own agenda, obviously.
Landed another high-profile endorsement from a prominent Republican. Arnold Schwarzenegger said even the Terminator says he's not going back to Donald Trump. But she also got a bit of a hiccup from Joe Biden. There was a Zoom with a Latina voting group, and Biden, who was referring to the comedian who called Puerto Rico garbage at the Trump rally Sunday, said something to the effect of, Puerto Rico isn't garbage, Trump supporters are garbage. This happened during Trump's rally, and fortunately, someone was there to help boost Marco Rubio up onto the stage so he could frantically share this important news.
I mean, that is important news. If the sitting president of the United States calls half of the political opposition, all of the political opposition, garbage. That's important news, right? Tony Hinchcliffe is a comedian. He's just a comedian. He's not a sitting president of the United States who has gone after his political opponents, put them in jail, gone after Donald Trump with 96 felonies, convicted him, all to stop him from running again, right? There's a major difference there.
Marco Rubio. Marco, will you come up here, please?
And we watched that yesterday, so I'm going to fast forward it. He comes up and basically just reads and says, "Oh, yeah, the president just called us garbage."
What kind of language is that to use? He's like an excited little minion bringing big news to Gru. It's like, Mr. President, stop the proceedings. I've got a bulletin. And if you thought that was insulting, wait till those people hear what you said about Donald Trump.
You all have friends that are thinking about voting for Donald Trump. Friends, do not let friends vote for con artists. He runs on this idea that he is fighting for the little guy. But he has spent his entire career sticking it to the little guy.
And he would know he's a little guy he stuck it to pretty hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, also, Marco Rubio is also running for president against Donald Trump. And that's fine. Like, people disagree with other people all the time. They don't disagree 100%. But now when the whole reputation of the Republican Party is at stake, you're going to back your candidate. You're going to back your candidate. J.D. Vance said some things against Donald Trump, too, that he didn't agree with. And now he's fully on board because the movement is that important right now.
Marco, you poor, sad man.
Here's where he goes over the garbage truck thing.
Multiple times a day. But now that Joe Biden used that word.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
He's driving a garbage truck. He went out and rented a garbage truck and put his name on the side. Shouldn't they have put him in the back of that? The garbage goes in the back of the truck.
There you go.
He even wore a sanitation worker safety vest. This is not a picture we created. This is an actual photograph of...
They're just grasping at straws, and they're desperate. And they wholeheartedly believe that they're going to win this election. Like, they're laughing at the polls. I mean, the polls are pretty neck and neck, but they're laughing at the notion that that Donald Trump will win. And right now, it appears that he actually might pull this off, which will be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, political upset in American history. To go from President of the United States to getting voted out, and no matter how you feel about the 2020 election, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of you don't feel that it was fair and accurate. But no matter how you feel, right? He lost the election. They did change some laws without judicial review or without representatives passing laws. They changed them to encourage more mail-in votes, more mail-in votes, more mail-in votes. He gets booted out of the White House. He gets charged with crimes, convicted of felonies, runs and wins again. This will be probably the biggest election, the biggest political upset that we will see in our lifetimes. I mean, this would be massive. If he won this, if he pulled this off, it would be extreme. And on top of that, the sitting president, their own party, booted him and said, "You're not running for re-election." And they still have yet to really give us a reason why Joe Biden is not running again, even though we all know that he's senile and that he's not capable of running for another 4 years, and he's not capable of running the country right now. It's an absolute joke, and it's an absolute disaster. And Kamala Harris should be invoking the 25th Amendment and removing him from office because he's not capable. He's not capable to run the country. That's what she should have done. Had Kamala Harris, at the time they removed Joe Biden, had she invoked the 25th Amendment, removed him from office, took over the presidency, and stated, Joe Biden is senile, he has dementia, we love him, we're grateful for all of his service to this country, but it's time for him to retire. And then taken it over and said his policies are bad, I'm fixing his policies, blah, 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 blah. She would have ran off with this election. 100%. She would have ran away with this election, and it wouldn't even have been a competition. But she can't do that because she spent her whole time in office talking about how smart and intelligent and how much of a genius that he was. And he's clearly not. I mean, clearly not, and that's okay. It happens. It happened to Ronald Reagan. I mean, he was out of office at the time, but he did get dementia, and he passed away from Alzheimer's. So that that was a major mistake on her part. History will look at that as a major mistake at her part. And the campaign that she is running is just accusations with that people don't. I mean, the far left, extreme leftists believe that. The moderate person does not believe that. The votes that she needs, the independent moderate voter that she needs on her side, people are not buying it. They're not buying that he's Hitler. They're not buying that it's a Nazi rally or he's going to be a dictator. Nobody's buying that. And I don't think you're going to change anybody's minds on Donald Trump or who Donald Trump is or anybody's opinion on Donald Trump. I think that it's basically just decided. And the key indicator here is going to be election day, like I said. And my concern is, and according to the polls, Kamala Harris may win this. That's just a reality, and it's important that you vote. And it's important that you talk to everybody that you know to go vote. Did you vote? Go vote. Why didn't you vote? And it doesn't matter who they're going to vote for. Just take them to the friggin' ballot box and have them vote. I mean, it's such an important right as an American citizen to exercise. And when you go to the ballot, you're not just voting for Donald Trump. You're voting for, or Kamala Harris, you're voting for a bunch of policies in your state. You know, in Florida, we had Amendment 4 and Amendment 5 to the Constitution, which is abortion and then recreational marijuana. So there's a lot of key factors here that are above, that are just as important as the presidential election. And I've always said that. You know, your local elections are much more important to you than the presidential election is. You know, your school board elections, that is massive about what they're going to teach your children and what teachers they're going allowed to teach there. And are they going to allow teachers to, you know, have LGBTQ plus flags in their classroom or Black Lives Matter flag in their classroom? Is your school board going to permit that? If you agree with that, fine, go vote for them. If you don't agree with that, then go vote them out. You know, we can sit around and we can sit on Facebook or, you know, Twitter or X or anything, or even at a table where there are friends and complain about the issues. But if you're not taking action against the issues, then the issues are always going to persist because the other side of the aisle is much more motivated than you are to change it. That is the reality of the situation in America. Conservatives are not as motivated. They're not really willing to go out and get their hands dirty and push for people to vote, push to change reform in their local areas as Democrats are. Democrats are much more activists than Republicans are. That is the sad reality that needs to change. In this election, there's a much higher sense of urgency for conservatives to go out and vote because they don't want the same old policies of Joe Biden. They don't want their grocery bills so high. They don't want their gas prices so high. They don't want to pay taxes on their Social Security. They don't want to pay taxes on tips. They don't want to deal with Kamala Harris, who had a lower approval rating than Donald Trump just a few months ago, and a lower approval rating than Joe Biden a few months before that. And the hard leftists are going to go with Kamala Harris no matter what. But I do think that the swing votes are going to sway towards Trump. Again, we need to make sure that we show up on Election Day. If you have not voted early, you need to go vote early. And if you have to show up on Election Day, then you show up on Election Day. But thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Scan this QR code. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Ryan F. Samuels and donate to the show. This show is completely funded by the listeners. I could sit here and I could read My Pillow ads, and maybe I might. You know what I'm saying? Mike Lindell. But this is I really try to keep this show commercial free and ad free, so it's just a conversation with the listeners. Thank you so much for all the support. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ryan Samuels Show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.